Odyssey Astrology. I'm Victor. Today we're going to talk about the uses and abuses of astrology, which is a really relevant topic for everyone involved with astrology, whether it's a peripheral interest or if you're an astrologer or whatever your involvement is with astrology. This idea of how to use astrology and how not to use astrology is really important, and it doesn't get enough attention because a lot of people get involved in astrology. Whether it's just reading a horoscope, for example, we can start with that. Like the most beginning level of interest and involvement with astrology. Maybe you read the horoscope in a newspaper. Well, it's not necessarily a good way to use it because, for one thing, it's not accurate to only understand yourself by your sun sign. And also it pigeonholes you into an area that's not really you. And so maybe you buy into these things that you think you are, but really you're so much more than that. Or maybe you're not that at all. Maybe you have your sun in Gemini, but you have 3 other planets, including your moon, in Capricorn. And so you start reading all these ideas that you find in a horoscope about having sun in Gemini, but really you're manifesting more of a personality and an energy of Capricorn, and how you live, how you pursue your career, how you pursue relationships, how, even your body type. Maybe it has more to do with Capricorn than Gemini. But if you really get into astrology and reading horoscopes and you've read all these things about the sun in Gemini, maybe it will actually influence you in a bad way in how you engage in life, because you are adjusting yourself and your relationship with life and your relationship with all kinds of components within your life from the perspective of someone who believes they have sun in Gemini and who believes that they are a Gemini, when in reality, if you have all this Capricorn energy, you're very different from Gemini. And so I think it's better to not get involved in astrology at all, rather than just get involved a little bit on the periphery through reading horoscopes or analysis about sun sign or sun sign compatibility. Because I think it just takes our energy and it confuses it into all these different things. And talking about horoscopes is a great way to start, because that's how most people understand astrology. And then even all these forecasts about monthly astrology, sometimes it bothers me, because I see these people I know and they read these monthly forecasts and they buy into it for themselves. But if let's say Venus and Mercury are transiting through Aries, that means something totally different for everyone. It's like maybe the forecast is true for the person who's doing the forecast. Maybe the astrologer who's doing a forecast for Mercury and Venus transiting through Aries has nailed it for their own chart, but they haven't nailed it for anyone else. And so maybe they nail it for 1 or 2 people who are reading their forecast, but for the rest of the people, they're actually misleading them. And so I think we shouldn't really buy into that mode of doing astrology, this more commercial mode maybe of doing it on a massive scale for thousands or even millions of people. It's better to look into it if you're actually going to get your chart read by someone who can give you advice based on the totality of who you are as seen through your astrology chart. But then even when we do that, I think it's important to be careful, because when someone has a reading of their chart, of their natal chart, of the chart that happened when they were born, there's different ways to do it. And I think the most important thing is that we have free will. We're human beings. Part of who we are is predetermined by our stars, by our karma, by our past lives, and by our destiny. And that includes who's raising us, what language we grow up speaking, what country we were born into. I mean, it's undeniable that these factors influence our prospects in life and what we can accomplish with our lives. But we can also change some of that too by our own effort, and more than anything by our desire to change ourselves. The very belief that we can be better than we are is a freedom. And if we leave that behind, we're leaving a huge part of our human freedom behind with us. And we're abandoning a huge part of our potential to evolve spiritually and as human beings. And so the most important thing for any human being is to believe in their own possibility to grow, their own possibility to be better than they are, their own possibility, the possibility that for their own life there are different possible outcomes. And if we continue to believe in that as we go through this process of understanding astrology, then it's great. Then astrology can be used to understand our strengths and weaknesses, our personalities, for good and bad, the strengths we were born with, the weaknesses we were born with, and how we can use those different qualities to create the best life possible. If we use astrology to understand and see through confusions we have about what we're meant to do, it's great. If we use it to pigeonhole ourselves and become slaves of our own stars, it's better to have never even heard of astrology. And so it's strange for me to say this because I am an astrologer, but I think most of the time the way people do astrology, it's better if they had never even heard of astrology. It's better if they had just used their logic and their own intuition and the advice of people who care about them and who have wisdom. Better to use that by far than to get into astrology in the wrong way and start thinking our lives are predetermined based on what someone else told us. And even that advice, the advice that someone might give us to make us think that our life will turn out a certain way, that advice is based on their vision. It's not based on God's vision. It's based on the vision of a human being. And so no astrologer is infallible. Every astrologer can see things wrong. And so it has to be squared with your own, whatever advice you get has to be squared with your own heart, your own intuition, your own feeling about what is possible with your life. Because astrology is complicated and it's intuitive. And it's hard to get it completely right. And so I think the real value of astrology is in practicality. If you're getting advice that makes sense, that's coming from the heart, that is given with empathy and compassion for your own humanity, the complexity of your life, then it can be good. It can help you realize your potential. But if it's given mathematically, if it's given linearly, if it's given fatalistically, that is to say, if it's given in a way that makes you feel like your life is going to turn out a certain way no matter what, it's wrong. Throw it out, forget you even ever had that reading, and start over. If you find another astrologer you like, great. If not, you don't even need to bother with it. But if you do develop a relationship with astrology that's mature, that's based on your own evolution, that's based on practicality and intuition and empathy and a sensitivity for the complexity of human existence, and it's just based on good advice, good practical advice for you, then it can help you. Then it can say, okay, you're going through a hard time this year. You don't need to make any hasty decisions. Just ride it out. Maybe in a year revisit. Or maybe that is to say, this month something really terrible happened to you. It's the beginning of a new cycle in your life. Be open to new possibilities. These are ways of looking at it that aren't rigid. It leaves choice to you. And when choice is left to you, I think it's better. Because the astrologer doesn't really know what you should do. They can frame the context of your life. They can give you perspective on your life. That's the purpose of an astrologer. It's to help you make a better decision for your life, not to make the decision for you. And so for everyone watching this, I encourage you to be very careful with how you relate to astrology and to above all value your own potential as a human being, the complexity of life, and when you get advice, make sure it leaves you the opportunity to make your own decisions. Get advice that helps you see things more clearly. When you leave a conversation with an astrologer or a reading, you should feel like your life is more clear, your freedom is more great, and that the possibilities for your life are greater. If you leave a reading feeling like your life has shrunk, the possibility for life has decreased, that your freedom as a human being has decreased, it wasn't a good reading. And so let's look at it in a more practical way that everyone can understand. Everyone can understand what it feels like to be more open to life, to be more enthusiastic about life, to be more positive about life. And so that is the role of an astrologer as a counselor, is to make you feel more enthusiastic, more inspired about life, not to feel more depressed. And so I always try to do that, and I think everyone who gets involved with astrology should keep those simple things in mind, that you can't let an astrologer make you feel like they know more than you. They're just there to help you realize your own potential and to help you realize what you already know. If you like this video, please comment below. I'd love to hear your feedback, and look forward to seeing you again.